Hello and welcome to class. This is the third lesson in our DATS tutorial series, in our DATS programming series, and um, a warm welcome. So today we are going to be looking at the different data types that we have in DATS programming. Now, when we talk about programming, right, when we talk about um, programming and in fact working with computers in general, we deal with data. All right, we always deal with data, and these data come in different forms. They come in different forms known as types, right? So that is where the word data types was coined from, right? So um, I'm going to be talking about all these different types of data, and we are just going to be looking at an overview, you know, an overview of the different data types in that, and later on, further down this course, we are going to be looking at the properties and methods of these data types, right? So we are going to be looking at what we can do with them, the ways we can manipulate them. All right. So let's begin with string. Now, in case you're wondering where I am at this website called tutorialspoint.com. All right. So this is a website where programmers, or should I say aspiring programmers, come to learn a language, any language that you want, any programming language you want to learn. All right, you can literally come here and search for it and learn it on this website. That is, if it is available. Although most programming languages, or nearly all the programming languages I know, are on this website. All right, so you can come here and pick up any programming language and learn on your own. And since we are learning that programming, I am in the that programming section of the website. Right, so you can see I'm at www.tutorialspoints.com/that programming. All right, so we are learning that, and so we are here now. What is a string? It says here that a string data type represents a sequence of characters. All right, so that's actually the simple definition of a string. It's just a sequence of characters, but that is not all. It says here in the second paragraph that string values in that can be represented using either single or double or triple quotes. All right, so that means a string is a sequence of characters enclosed in quotes. When I say quotes, I mean quotation marks. All right, and we have some examples here. So let me create some string variables. Now, where I am right now, this is an IDE called Visual Studio Code. All right, so it's where I code. This is where I do my software development. An IDE simply is the term IDE simply refers to integrated development environment, right? This is where I have the tools or the environments that I need to build a software, or let's say to do my programming, right? This is where I do my programming in a development sorry, in a development environment, right? Like Visual Studio Code. So I would recommend you use Visual Studio Code also, but if you have maybe an IDE of your choice that you're more comfortable with, you can go with it. But personally, I use VS Code and I would recommend the same. download it, you can just go to the internet and type Visual Studio Code. They have a website, but I can't remember the name, the domain of the website, right? So just type Visual Studio Code and it brings you here. All right, this is the domain, code.visualstudio.com. All right, so you can just click on it, or better still, click on download. All right, I can also download here. You can click on download, and it brings you here. And if you're on a Windows computer, you can click here to download for Windows. If you're on Linux, either Debian or Ubuntu, you can click here. If you're on any other Linux distribution, you can click here to download your version of Visual Studio Code. And if you're on a Mac like me, you can download yours here. All right, so that's it. I already have my Visual Studio Code ready. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a file, a DAT file. All right, so I'll click on file up here, and I'll click on new file, and this thing pops out here where you can enter the name of your file, right? And depending on the type of file you're creating, you will also attach the extension. So I will show you what I mean in a minute. I want to name my file strings, since we are talking about strings. All right, and then strings is the name of my DAT file. All right, or let me call it dat_strings. Okay, so this is the name of my file, the DAT file I want to create, right? And then the next thing I'll do is I'll attach my extension using dots, right? And then my extension dat. I'm attaching .dat because what I'm creating is a DAT file, all right? Because of course I am going to be writing DAT programs in it. Understand? If this were a JavaScript tutorial or a JavaScript course, I would do .js, okay, to indicate that what I'm trying to create is a JavaScript file. All right. If it were a Python course and I'm trying to create a Python file, I will have to do .py, but since it is a DAT course, I'm going to use .dat. All right, and the next step is to choose a location where I want this file to be stored. Right, so the place I have in mind is in desktop, and I already have a folder I created called that file. Right, so I'm going to click on it, and inside of this folder now I'll create file. Now I have my DAT file. All right, now the first thing I will have to have in my program, my DAT program, is the main function, which is our entry point into our DAT program. All right, but I'm not doing anything inside this main function yet. I just want to declare some string variables. All right, so string name is my name. All right, let me say first name. No, my first name is actually, all right, so string middle name, I'll say Emmanuel. Okay, so if you noticed anything here, it should be that these two strings have different types of quotes. All right, for my first name I used double quotes, and for my middle name, I used single quotes. All right, so I just did this to show you that you can declare your string with either single or double quotes as you wish. All right, so that's it. And we have some examples here. All right, so this is for single quotes, this for double quotes. All right, and then we also have what we call multi-line string. All right, multi-line string. Now, what do I mean by multi-line string? This string that I created here now has the value has to be this string value, right? They all have to be on the same line. All right, they all have to be on line 3. Okay, if I try to break it, I'm going to have an error. Okay, I'm going to have an error, so I cannot have a new line inside of this string. All right, so it's meant to be a single line string. Same with this one. All right, so I cannot have my string broken into different lines. It's not possible with single and double quotes. All right, but if I introduce triple quotes, let me just create a sentence. All right, my name is Ebuka. Can you see? Now I have triple quotes. All right, and any number of quotes from 3 that you wrap your string with, right, makes your string value a multi-line string, meaning that this string can exist in different lines. All right, so I can do this. All right, so this is a multi-line string. All right, and we even have another type of string which I saw here. This one has 6 lines, but it's not important, right? It's not important to know that. Well, you can just have it as extra information, but you don't need, you are not going to have to do anything with it. So this, let me bring this back. So these are the various different types of strings we have. All right, so if I decide to print sentence, you will see that my string will appear just the same way with all the spaces and new lines. All right, it's going to appear just like this. Let's see. You see? All right, so this is a multi-line string, and these two are single line strings. Okay, so let's move on. Now we have something called string interpolation. What is string interpolation? String interpolation is a process of creating a new string by appending a value to a static string. Okay, let me take this again. It says the process of creating a new string by appending a value to a static string is termed as concatenation or interpolation. In other words, it is the process of adding a string to another string. Right? So I don't quite agree with this definition, but let me give you my own definition. The process of creating a new string by appending a value to a static string is known as concatenation. All right, not interpolation. So concatenation means the process. Concatenation is the process of creating a new string by appending a value to a static string. Let me um, give an example. Let me make an example of that. So I already have this string, first name, all right, and I have middle name. So if I click on first name, you know what? If I print first name, you know what I'm going to have, right? I'm going to have my first name, which is Ebuka, and if I print middle name, you know what I'm going to have? Emmanuel, middle name, all right? So these are two different values, all right? But I can concatenate. What does it mean to concatenate? Is what I just explained here. Is the process of creating a new string by appending a value to a static string. All right. So I have this value, and notice what they say here. They say the operator plus, no, that was the plus sign, the plus operator is a commonly used mechanism to concatenate strings. All right. Just ignore this interpolate. Like I said, this does not refer to interpolation, it refers to concatenation actually. Okay, so if I do first name plus middle name, I'm going to have my two names together, but this doesn't look so good. You can agree with me. All right, so what I can do is I can actually interpolate something else in their midst. Just concatenate a space, all right, or add a space to the concatenation, this space to the concatenation, and now they are spaced out. I believe this is a very simple concept to understand, right? But if you're having a hard time or some difficulty following, understanding, I will encourage you to maybe pause the video or rewind and watch again, right? And it's going to make sense to you. Now, I've spoken about concatenation, right? I can declare another string. I'll call it last name. I'm just going to call it C. Let me just add some more letters, G. Okay. So to concatenate these two, I'll add last name. And now you can see my almost full name being printed. Okay. So we have looked at concatenation of string. Let's now look at string interpolation. All right, let's say I have another variable which I'm going to call age and initialize to the integer 20. All right, and let me bring this back into a single line so that you won't be confused. All right, and let's say I just have an incomplete sentence. My name is, all right. So this is the data I have and I want to make a sentence. I really want to make a sentence that says, my name is Ebuka and I am 20 years old. How do you think I can achieve this? Can I do that with concatenation? Let's try. So print incomplete, concatenate first name, concatenate age. Now you can see that this doesn't work, right? And if I hover on this, I'm getting this error that says the argument type int can't be assigned to the parameter type string. All right, so you just tell me that already inside my print statement. Now let's look at this print statement for a moment. This print is actually a function within the Dart framework, right? That is being called in our code to print something on our console. All right. So I mentioned earlier, I believe I mentioned earlier what a function is. A function is just a piece of code, a block of code that executes a specific task or some specific tasks. All right. The main function, what the main function simply does is to execute our code, execute whatever it is that we write inside it. All right. That's just what it does. Okay. So when we write our code and we want to execute it, this main is what our compiler is going to look at and execute whatever is inside it. Anything that is outside will not be executed. Right, all of these will not be executed. That is why I can have a variable outside of here. All right, I can have a variable outside here, a random string that will not be executed when I click on this one. Why? Because it is not referenced inside the main function, right? There's nowhere you will see random inside this main function. The only way this random is going to be executed or is going to have anything done with it is if I reference it inside this main function. All right. So it's something similar happens with the print function. All right. What this one simply does is just to print anything that we pass, anything that we give it, right? Whatever we give to it, it prints it here on our console, all right, on our debug console. So and of course it only takes one argument. Now you can see that inside here I have just one object. All right, I have just one object. If you hover on it from here, you see the same thing. It takes just one object, and in that object is the super type of all our data types. All right, this type objects. So it's, I know we are talking about data types right now, right? But we have super types. We have super types. For instance, we know that both int and double are numbers. All right. So both 20 and, let me create another variable. I'm going to wait. And I'll initialize it to 70.5. But we should be a double. Alright. Now both these values are numbers. Alright. And because they are numbers, they come under one super type called num. Alright. So with num, I can store any of these. I can store age in num, and I can store weight in num because both int and double are under num, right? When you hear num, you can think of number. Num simply means number. All right. So in the Dart framework, in the Dart ecosystem, int and double, sorry, in that programming language, all right, int and double come under num because they are numbers. All right. So this num is a super type for both int and double. All right. But we have all right, in this same way, we have a particular data type known as object. Right. I'm going to call this all obj. Now this can store anything. It can store any value. All right. And the reason for that is because this object is a super type of all the data types that we have in that. Right. I don't know if you get it. So anything in that, from int to double to string to map to list, all of them are under object. Object is the super type of all the data types that we have in that. All right. So when we look at this print, all right, this print function, it's a void function, meaning that it's not going to, we are not returning anything from this function. All right. When we execute it, we don't return anything from it. So this print takes an argument, and this argument is of the type object. That is why we can print any data type at all. All right, we can print any data type at all. I'm trying to print a list. All right, so we can basically print anything in here. We can print a map, we can print a set, we can print anything, just name it. All right, but we cannot print two things at once. We cannot print two data types at once. Why? Because this print statement it takes only one argument, right? Trying to print something of two data types is not going to work, right? So whatever you're printing has to be of uniform data type, right? It has to correspond with one object. Do you understand? So when I did this concatenation, right, I concatenated this string. I joined this string together, these 5 strings together to form one string, since they are all of the same data type. Okay, but here, when I tried to join incomplete and 20, I got an error, right? Because this print takes only one object, all right? And I'm trying to be tricky here. I'm trying to join values of two different data types together, and that is not going to work. That is not going to turn out well. All right, so what do I now do? What I have to do is string interpolation. Now, what does string interpolation refer to? String interpolation simply means inserting a value into a string. All right, inserting a value into a string. And how that is done is with a symbol, the dollar sign. This dollar sign is how we carry out string interpolation. All right, So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this in quotes, right? Making sure that whatever I have here is is a string. And then what I can now do also is to insert this value, this age value here, using this symbol. This is a symbol of interpolation, remember, right? So now that I've inserted it, I can just comment this out. I can now run my code and have this value, this age value, printed out along with my string. All right. So right here, I'm saying my name is 20. This is not what I intended. Right. I intended to have something that says my name is, and then I'll interpolate my first name and add full stop, and I'll say I am, and then interpolate my age and say years old. All right. So I believe I have a complete sentence now. My name is, okay, I'll have to remove this extra space. All right. My name is Ebuka. I am 20 years old. So this is what string in interpolation means. Okay. String concatenation simply means joining strings together using the plus operator, right? Just like you're adding things together, you're adding things to each other. All right. Why interpolation simply means inserting. Okay, inserting. You can call this adding. All right. So I hope you get the difference. All right. We'll continue um in our next lesson. Thank you.